A very important economic principle to remember is when you make something free, you make demand infinite. And so it doesn't surprise me in today's world, of course, that women have pushed for debt loan forgiveness, right? In the world of I don't need no man, what women do need is daddy government, who they've essentially married for the past several generations. And it's not just women. In fact, it's just about everybody, because America is a socialist nation. And so as a result of being a socialist nation, you always have the constant clamoring for the government to do something, right? This is the narrative typically in socialist nations. Why? Because they become dependent upon the state. They're no longer self-dependent. They're no longer self-reliant. Instead of going out and working hard for the things that they want, they point to the government and say, do something. And so in today's world, where, of course, women are inundated with debt because women, by their choice, were pushed, because of feminism, to go into the workplace. And then, of course, become educated. And then, of course, you have, some of these women that talk about their education. I'm an independent woman. I don't need no man. And, of course, in the spirit of Kevin Samuels, I'm a PhD. And then, of course, they complain to the government for debt relief because they don't want to pay back their student loan. And this is why, as far back as you can look, men have always been responsible for women, because women by nature are not responsible. When you look back in a book that America is based off of, just about the whole West and much of the world is very familiar with the Bible. And in the very beginning of the Bible, we learn about the very first couple, Adam and Eve. And so when Eve sinned, and then later, of course, she dragged Adam in along with her, which we've seen, right? We've seen that in today, where many men get ensnared, though they understand better, they get lured in by the women that they lie with. And of course, they end up in trouble. And so Adam, being weak and not listening to God, but instead chose to listen to Eve for whatever reason. And as a result, when God went to Adam, of course, blamed everything on Eve. And then Eve said, hey, it wasn't my fault. It was the serpent. But in that scenario, the people, I should say the person that God went to first, even though Eve was the one that technically had sinned first, God went to the man. And that is the history of mankind. That men, in no matter what country you go to, no matter what culture, men have always been responsible for women. And what you see today proves the need. Why? Because women get themselves into trouble. They get themselves into debt, and then they cry to the government. The government needs to do something. When the pandemic came along, they went, where are all the men, right? When all the mandates started to go out, and a lot of these women didn't want to take it, and everywhere on social media, somebody needs to do something. And the somebody that they always refer to are men. Now, of course, in today's scenario where we have, Senator Elizabeth Warren talking about how Mitch McConnell graduated, when he graduated from school, the cost was about $330 a year. Now, these are the boomers. Now, the boomers were very much responsible for voting in social programs and for the pushing of artificial creation of money, fiat currency. They pushed the government during the 70s. When America experienced the highest inflation, right? This was because of the social programs. When America got off of when the dollar got off of gold, the reason that they didn't was because the politicians couldn't raise taxes, and they refused to cut social welfare spending. And as a result, they had to get off of gold. Gold was the standard. And so the dollar there was an equivalence that you could get a measure of gold. Now you get nothing. And here is where we are. We are at the tail end of the mob. And this is what you get with democracy. With democracy, which is what the founding fathers did not want, you get rule by mob. And of course, every bit of the mob clamors for what they want. Some of the old members of the mob clamor for welfare reform. They clamor for Social Security. We need more Social Security. This part of the mob says we need to lower insulin prices. This part of the mob says housing is too expensive. That part of the mob says education is too expensive. It all needs to be all right. So what do you do as a politician? How do you cater to the mob? Because a politician's job is just to get reelected. That's the only thing that a politician is good for. It is what it is. And so they're concerned with getting reelected. How do I please the mob, right? Back in the Roman times, what did they do? They gave them the Colosseum. They would throw bread. They would throw bread to the mob to appease the mob, right? Because Rome, if you watch any of those old Roman shows, all right, what did they always say? Rome is the mob, and he who controls the mob controls Rome. And this is where we are in America. Some places have a dictator. Other places have sort of a kingship, right? Like in the UK, even though it's all fake. But in America, we have the whims of the sea. The Bible talks about that in depthly. Talks about the wicked are like the ocean, right? They're like the tossed sea, and it brings up mire. And that's what it says. The wicked are like that. This is what people are like. And it's difficult when you're in the position of authority, where you are the one who is controlling the mob, right? You're the ringmaster. And the mob comes to you, lower education prices. What do? And so people continue to ask for things from their ringleaders, from their masters. And as a result, they could become completely dependent upon them. And this is where we are, and this is where we will continue to go. And like all socialist nations, it always comes to a very disastrous ending. And that's why these people don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with what's going to happen if we cut spending. What's going to happen if we pull away the welfare from the mob, right? Just look at Sri Lanka. Look at all these different nations. Look at Argentina. There's plenty of nations that are out there where the people are rioting. They're pulling over politicians and banging on the windshields of cars, and they're fighting. Look what's going on in Denmark with the farmers, right? Take your pick. Pick your nation. You don't see it on TV, but you can see it on social media. And if you're watching, you should be paying attention, because when it comes here, it will be far worse than in many other nations, because many of these people have guns. And that's why politicians like Elizabeth Warren are so worried about what happens when the welfare runs out. And they're hoping that it's not on their watch. They're hoping that they're dead by the time that happens. And so they're going to do everything that they can to push it off. If the mob wants a little bit of education, debt relief, let's give them a little bit. Let's not bankrupt the whole country right away, so that we immediately face those ramifications that we're so afraid of when it all comes crumbling down. Let's appease them bit by bit, because these individuals like Elizabeth Warren are very fearful of what happens when the welfare runs out and the bellies go hungry, and they're not there to help them, and there's nothing that they can do. You better be ready, because it's going to happen in your lifetime. This is not going to go on and continue on, and the Fed is going to fix everything. It's not going to happen. You're going to see it in your lifetime. And that's what I said in my other video, where I said you're going to see black violence like you've never seen before. Go on YouTube, go on social media. You're already seeing it. Look at places like in New York. Look at places like in San Francisco, like in what's going on in San Francisco. Look at the homelessness. It's just a glimpse. People give you a glimpse of who they really are. And when push comes to shove and there's no more food, or they can't afford the food, they're going to come looking for you. There's so many videos out there of young black kids just running around in the streets of New York looking for their next victim, going from street to street, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, and eventually they will find you. I'll leave you a little video at the end just so you can see what I'm talking about.